So the question's a good one. The book Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse, is that the story of the Buddha? It's a novel. It's not really, it's kind of about someone who's sort of like him and happens to have the same name but not him.
Yeah.
And it follows a lot of the same storylines, but there's a lot of stuff in that book that has nothing to do with the historical story of the Buddha, like spending 6 years as a riverboat captain or whatever, as a ferryman and that kind of stuff. So no, it's a good book though. I liked it. I mean, I read it when I was a teenager, and it was when I was getting interested in Buddhism, and it's a neat book, but it's not, historical. Mara had questioned his qualifications to become enlightened, and basically said, how arrogant you think you should be able to escape this cycle? What makes you think you deserve this? And at that point, Siddhartha looked back and saw all of his past lives, and you can go back and there's these stories, the Jataka tales about his previous lives, and it talks about, and he told some of them himself, talking about how he perfected certain qualities, and basically transcending some of the spiritual hindrances and so on. And so he saw that there had been all these lives leading up to this point, and this was the culmination of all of that. He was at that point where he was ready. And so he basically reached down and said, the earth is my witness. That I'm, in other words, yes, I'm qualified, and the earth has seen all of this. And so then the myth is that, as Michelle said a minute ago, that Mother Earth came up and dipped her hair into the water and then wrung it out and washed the armies of Mara away. But that's kind of a cultural story. I mean, what really happened is that if you look at where did I start, what brought me to this point, and you start going back, where did I begin? On my birthday? No, because I was around for 9 months before that, and then my parents came from somewhere, and so there's all these causes and conditions. Where all these start? Where the causes and conditions led to this point? Where did that begin? Well, the earth has seen all of that. That it all came out of this particular universe right here. And so I think that's kind of one way of seeing that is that this is the oldest thing I could touch. This is where all of that stuff came from. Mara is basically the forces of temptation. We wrestle with Mara all the time. And if you look at certain tellings of the story where the daughters come, the daughters are, each daughter represents a particular quality that could have derailed his practice. Desire, fear, all those things are represented in those daughters. And so they're not beings, they're something that's in your mind that can cause you to falter spiritually. And the demons, the same thing. I mean, you think about it. When you sit down to meditate, what comes up? You don't just fall into this nice groove usually. You got to wrestle with stuff for a little while first. And so that's what, I think that's a convenient way of looking at that. There's a lot of stuff in this story that I think you could see as sort of spiritual truths. In our culture, we have this idea that something is true if it's factual, kind of historically accurate and that sort of thing, and if it's not, that it's not true. But I don't think Asians are that concerned about that, and I think that you can see these things as myths, and these myths are spiritual truths. That doesn't make them metaphors or analogies. They're still true, they're just not true in the sort of historically factual sense. I doubt very seriously, I don't think we're expected to believe that this newborn infant walked and spoke and lotus flowers bloomed at his feet. But when you think about that, the significance of this moment, of this person coming into this world, everything that led up to that point, to that birth, which was going to lead to that liberation, which was we were still going to be talking about 2,600 years later, you know? Taking 7 steps in each direction and lotus blossoms blooming at his feet and pointing up at the sky and saying, I'm the world-honored one, that's really kind of insignificant compared to what really happened, you know? Mm-hmm. And so when you look at something like their descriptions of hells, and they, you know, Buddhist descriptions of hells would make Dante cringe. And you think, oh my gosh, you know, what's that about? But then you look and go, well, when I'm not paying attention and I create suffering, what is that? You know, how bad is that? You know, even something like making an angry comment to somebody in the grocery store during the holiday season when everybody's feeling pressured and all of that, you know, can have these ripples through society. And when you think, well, if I took all of the suffering that I cause for myself and others through not being mindful, through not being compassionate, how would you represent that? You know, it could look pretty bad, couldn't it? Mm-hmm. You know, mm-hmm. And so I think that things like Mara are a nice way to approach these concepts that are really sort of beyond our ability to comprehend intellectually in a way that has the emotional and spiritual impact that it does when we look at something like Mara on that sort of mythical level. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.